Welcome back. Today we're diving straight into a brand new explainer, and honestly, this is a fascinating one. We're going to explore the mysteries of what biblical prophets actually witnessed when they accessed the spirit realm. Throughout history, we read about these completely extraordinary figures, people who described visions that literally changed the course of nations and altered human destinies forever. They somehow tapped into mysteries that were totally hidden from the natural eye. They were seeing things that powerful kings couldn't see and grasping realities that the absolute brightest scholars of their day just couldn't explain. But this all begs a massive question, one we're going to map out today.
So, what did the prophets really see? To start peeling back the layers here, we have to ask a pretty blunt question. Were these historical accounts just, highly symbolic dreams? Or were they actual glimpses into realities that exist just beyond our ordinary human perception? Because when you read about these heavenly encounters and supernatural experiences in the ancient texts, it's so easy to wonder, wait, were they just having incredibly vivid, metaphorical dreams, or were they actually stepping into another dimension entirely? As we walk through this, we're going to look at the specific patterns of what they encountered. Because, as you'll see, understanding what they saw completely flips how we view the unseen world today.
Now here is a crucial piece of the puzzle. A seer is an individual who perceives realities beyond ordinary human sight, looking past the surface to see invisible forces influencing visible circumstances. One of the biggest misunderstandings out there is that a prophet's main job was just, forecasting what would happen tomorrow, like a mystical weatherman, right? But they weren't just guessing tomorrow's events. They were seers. While everyone else was completely fixated on the immediate, visible circumstances right in front of them, these seers looked deeper. They looked way past the obvious surface-level stuff to perceive the invisible forces that were actively influencing those very circumstances.
And that brings us to a major contrast. Think about what humans see versus what prophets see. Humans look around and see chaos, confusion, and uncertainty. But prophets? They see government, divine order, and God's absolute authority. This contrast is literally everything. When humanity looks at the world, it's so easy to panic over the visible chaos, right? But the prophets looked at the exact same circumstances and saw the sovereign government of God's throne. The very first thing they usually saw wasn't even a future event, it was that throne. It reminded them, and really, it reminds us, that heaven is never, ever surprised by the events unfolding down here on earth.
Before anything else was revealed, the sovereignty of God took center stage. You have figures like Isaiah, Ezekiel, and John encountering unimaginable splendor, and heavenly beings declaring, "Holy, holy, holy." Isaiah actually described seeing the Lord high and lifted up, surrounded by beings crying out that exact phrase. Ezekiel described this overwhelming vision filled with brilliant light and creatures unlike anything he'd ever seen before. John described pure majesty. By seeing this absolute, undeniable sovereignty first, these prophets were totally grounded in the reality that God is firmly on the throne, regardless of how crazy things get on earth.
Section 1. The Unseen Earthly Battles.
You see, the prophetic vision didn't just stay locked away up in the throne room of heaven. It extended right down into the dust and dirt of human history. We're talking about angelic assignments here, delivering messages, providing guidance, offering protection, and executing divine purposes. People so often imagine angels as these passive, distant beings floating on clouds, totally disconnected from our everyday lives. But seers perceived a spirit realm that was highly active and incredibly organized. Daniel encountered messengers revealing the mysteries of nations. Zechariah saw them interpreting visions. Elisha literally saw heavenly armies surrounding him, right when his own servant was terrified because all he could see was the enemy. The spirit realm they described is buzzing with divine activity. And this reveals a pretty sobering perspective from the ancient texts. Visible events often have invisible dimensions. Human history isn't just shaped by politics or military strength, it's shaped by deeper, unseen spiritual conflicts. Daniel, for instance, received direct insight into spiritual battles happening right behind earthly political events. Now, this doesn't mean every single flat tire or daily annoyance has some grand supernatural cause, but it highlights a profound claim. Visible events frequently have invisible dimensions. This gave the prophets a massive advantage. While everyone else was panicking over what the armies or politicians were doing, the prophets stayed incredibly calm because they perceived the deeper realities actually driving human affairs.
Section 2. Looking beyond the surface. As we peel back another layer, the prophetic vision shifts from those massive cosmic battles down to the deep internal truths of human nature. We're moving from the macro level of nations right down to the micro level of individuals. Think about this contrast, outward appearance versus the internal heart. Ordinary sight focuses on present weakness and outward image, while prophetic sight focuses on future potential and internal authenticity. Most of the world judges by appearances, right? By present weakness or someone's outward image. But the text suggests the spirit realm couldn't care less about image. It responds to authenticity. God doesn't merely judge by superficial success. He sees future possibilities. Think about when Samuel was shown a future king hidden within a young, overlooked shepherd boy. Where others just saw a shepherd, the prophetic lens revealed a king. It's a powerful reminder that the spiritual lens focuses on who a person can become, not just who they are today.
And this vision allowed them to see the entire trajectory of a decision. Step 1, the seed, which is the present choice. Step 2, the choice is made. Step 3, the hidden harvest. And finally, step 4, the ultimate consequence. Most of us evaluate our decisions based on what we get right now, the immediate benefit. But seers, they saw this whole progression. By looking beyond the immediate, they could step through the long-term consequences of human choices. They could look at the seed of a present choice and immediately recognize the hidden harvest and the ultimate consequence waiting way down the line. This is exactly what allowed them to expertly warn nations and guide leaders away from totally destructive paths. The wise don't just ask, hey, what will this do today? They ask, where is this going to take me tomorrow? Because eternal realities make temporary struggles appear very, very small. Think about it. When someone has literally glimpsed eternity, temporary struggles just naturally lose their grip. Having seen the absolute majesty of heavenly worship, the prophets found that earthly distractions lost all their power. They saw glory completely beyond description, and because of that, earthly distractions became so much less attractive. They understood, in their bones, that life was significantly larger than what could just be seen with natural eyes. That perspective shift, it permanently transformed the way they walked through their everyday existence.
Section 3. The ultimate prophetic vision.
Now, we've reached the climactic core of this whole explainer, because the greatest revelation in Scripture is God Himself. The greatest thing these seers saw was not angels, it wasn't future events, and it wasn't hidden mysteries. It's so easy for us to become completely fascinated by the visions, the heavenly creatures, and the supernatural experiences. But the texts show us that the ultimate purpose of every prophetic encounter was never merely to gather secret supernatural information. It was always, always about receiving a revelation of the Creator. Every single true prophetic encounter ultimately pointed people right back to the Creator, back to His purposes, and back to His presence. These encounters constantly revealed the core attributes of God: holiness, wisdom, justice, mercy, faithfulness, power, and love. Again and again, the prophets were confronted with staggering mercy, endless love, and perfect justice. The texts indicate that the absolute greatest treasure in the unseen world is not unlocking some secret, hidden knowledge or predicting the future. The greatest treasure is simply knowing the Creator. Because when that relationship is established, everything else on earth, all the chaos, all the confusion, begins to fall into its proper place, and finally, actually makes sense. Knowing God completely changes your perspective. Fear fades, faith grows, and hope becomes stronger. This shift in perspective is exactly why these ancient texts still matter so much for us today. When you view reality through this prophetic lens, fear just naturally fades away, faith grows, and your hope becomes incredibly resilient. The prophets saw reality from a heavenly perspective. They noticed that divine work was happening even when ordinary human eyes couldn't see a single thing going on. They realized that there is a deep, profound purpose hidden right inside the very problems and darkness that we face every day. Lord, open my eyes. We might not all see the dramatic, world-altering visions that Isaiah or Daniel saw, but the lesson for us today is to deeply consider the perspective shift they experienced. The greatest realities are so often completely invisible to our natural eyes. If you want to begin to see your life, your struggles, and your future from a totally different perspective, it starts with a simple, powerful request, asking to have your eyes opened. So, I'll leave you with this final thought. What unseen realities might be shaping your world right now, just waiting for you to truly see them?